Hi everybody, welcome to Mobility Monday. My name is Bart Hawkinson, physical therapist at Therapeutic Associates, North Lake Physical Therapy. Today we're going to talk about hip mobility. We've done some videos in the past on stretches for the hips and the legs. Today we're going to be focusing more on the hip joint itself. And fact of the matter is that the hip tends to get stiff, and it does get stiff with time. A lot of this has to do with the way we live our lives. We spend a lot of time in cars, we spend a lot of time sitting, and that does cause just a lot more tightness around the hip joint. When we're looking at the anatomy of the hip is a very stable but mobile joint. So it's a ball into a socket, and that allows for a great degree of rotation, swing, all the movements that the human hip needs to do to allow us to walk forward, to squat, to perform stairs. And as that joint stiffens up, we lose those functions. So taking a deeper dive, the hip has a capsule, tough connective tissue that are effectively, think of them as ligaments around that ball and socket joint that hold it in place. Around that is a great deal of musculature. Again, we've spent some attention to stretching for the muscles, but we're going to be focusing a little bit more onto the connective tissue, the capsule of the hip, and stretching the ball and socket. As that stiffens up, it can reduce movement, it can limit your ability to squat or get in and out of chairs and get down to the floor. And it also can create a lot of painful conditions, things such as hip impingement, where we get pain in the front of the hip, in the groin region, or maybe deep in the buttock, due to that lack of mobility. And then when we try to move, it's like the gears grind as we go. So focusing on some stuff that we can do to help maintain and restore more mobility at the hip goes a long ways towards improving function. All right, so if I'm going to get into a squat position, I want to maintain that good squat posture. So my lower legs should be vertical, hips going back. And if I'm tightened through the hip, I'm either going to limit out, not be able to get low, say I want to get down to the ground or to get into a chair, or it's going to cause me to get thrown into a less than optimal position. So weightlifters who are squatting, people that are hiking, obviously doing sports, you're going to want to maintain that mobility, especially as we get a little bit older. So a couple stretches that I really like that are a little bit, they've got a little horsepower to them that are really good for the hip here. And we're going to use these heavy duty bands. So you can get these online. These are nice ones. They're strong. They're worth about 20 pounds of pressure here, I believe. But if you don't have access to these, they can be done by using regular band, just tying together into a loop to create, this is a little small, but to create a large loop, not quite as effective because you do want something that's pretty strong. So I'm going to demonstrate this with the monster bands. So we'll take our band here, we're going to loop it around something heavy, something that's not going to move. So I'm going to use our weight rack here. Hook that in so it's good and stable, and then put that around my leg there, and I'm coming up as tight into the front of the hip as I can get there, and then I'm going to move forward to where I'm getting some pretty strong pull back through the band here. So now from here, my feet are back behind me, my knees are a little bit more than shoulder width apart, back is relatively straight, maintaining strong pull from the band, and I'm going to sit back like so. Trying to maintain, or I'm in a position where I'm trying to maintain pull through the band. So if I get back and the band slackens off, I don't feel any pull anymore, I'm going to move forward a little bit further. So I've got a strong pull through the whole motion. I'm going to ease back into that for about 5 seconds, and then come on back up. And I would go ahead and do that about 10 times. Now I'm going to turn, not quite 90 degrees here. So I'm at a little bit of an off angle as that maintains a good pull. And now you can imagine that this band, it's pulling that hip. It's almost like it's helping to pull that hip almost out of its socket. And that creates a little bit more space in that joint for that joint to rotate. Okay, so now I've maintained that good pull, and I'm leaning straight back. And if you really stiffen the hips, you may find that right away you can't go very far. It's just kind of like that's the end of the road. As you do these a few more repetitions, you might find that you're able to sit back into a slightly deeper and deeper stretch as you go. So same thing, I'm going to hold about 3 to 5 seconds at the bottom of the stretch, and I'll do that about 10 times. Ease myself out of this stretch here. All right, now that I've worked through that hip there, I'm going to come back up and I'm going to go into that squat. You might find that, hey, it's a little bit better. If both hips are tight, you might find that, well, now this one feels a little bit better. You feel a little bit kind of cattywampus. So now you'd go over, same thing on the other side to balance yourself out. All right, so we talked about some good kind of high-level stretches for the hips. Again, these are not necessarily for everybody. You know, if you do have, say, advanced hip arthritis, or if you just, you have to get into that position where you're down on the ground, some people might not be able to get there. There are some modifications, where you would see your physical therapist that can work some stuff up for you. But for people that have some tightness, but otherwise not a lot of limitations in the hips, these are really great stretches to continue to make some improvements, and most importantly, to prevent, further decline in mobility of the hip. So really important for everybody who wants to, maybe they're into strength training, they're doing squats, people that want to ski where you're getting into that tuck, even, gardening, things where you want to be able to get to the ground. And I mean, for me personally, hey, I don't want to lose that ability as I continue to get older. So this is something that I do on a fairly regular basis. All right, everybody, hope you enjoyed that video about moving, getting your hips moving better. Keep moving, stay safe. We'll see you next time.